Good evening, everybody. Welcome to a special edition of a CAF interview. Normally on Tuesday nights, we do Comic Art Live with the dealers, but this is our week off after doing 3 consecutive weeks. We'll be back at it again on Tuesday. Actually, no, next week we're going to be on Monday night. Tuesday evening is the next Comic Link featured auction. So instead of having our chat on Tuesday evening, we're going to do it on Monday evening. So the 7th next week, that will be with Micah Spivak from Comic Connect. He's I don't know if he's a longtime collector, but he's new to CAF. So we were going to have, we've talked about trying to bring in younger people or newer people to the hobby. So that is our one approach to that. On Thursday of next week, I'll be speaking with Vincent Zerzolo on my CAF update. Then on 11/15, we'll have Michael Lovitz, which should be a lot of fun. Obviously, probably the most prolific George Perez collector out there. So I'm looking forward to chatting with Michael. On the 17th, I've got on my CAF update, Travis Ellisor and Joshua McCoy. And they'll be talking about different commissions and things that they've got going on in their collections. We're probably going to take the week of Christmas off. Haven't decided yet. I'll probably do some kind of CAF update, though it may be a recorded update. And then for the final week of December, we've got Jim Warden on 12/29, and then on 12/30, just the next night after that, I will be talking to collector Kenneth Carter. And we've already probably got half of January filled up too, as far as with chats that we're going to be doing. So there's pretty much a never-ending supply of people that we wanted to talk with. And we've actually been kicking around several ideas for the Comic Art Live chat too, introducing just some straight up different programming where we're talking about, affordable art from masters in the hobby, those sorts of things, and just trying to, mix things up a little bit. So you can expect a lot of new changes to the format that we have, and hopefully, introducing some new concepts that I think will spur more conversation, between collectors. So looking forward to doing that. But tonight, it's my honor to have a collector on CAF who's been there pretty much since the beginning in 2003. And let me bring Ankur in. It's Ankur Jetley. Thank you for, thank you for being on the show this evening, Ankur. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
So we always start off every episode with someone's origin story, as you know, and I believe you've collected for quite some time, and you didn't start collecting in 2003, right? So when did you get started?
So I think it was reading Kingdom Come by Alex Ross, which really exposed me to original art. I was very fascinated with how he painted and how realistic he was, and started looking into his art online. And it was right around the time as well that a lot of his treasury editions, like Superman, Peace on Earth, and the Wonder Woman books had come out. So started taking a look at those, and was going to local shows while in school and saw artists there. And I think one of my first pieces of art was from Dave DeVries, who is a New Jersey native as well. And then as more and more websites and eBay started showing up, just started dabbling more and more, and it just grew from there. And found more dealers online as well. That was the beginning of it.
So what year would that have been? Like
that was probably 2000, 2001. I was still doing old comics at the time, more so, but started dabbling in art as well then.
So had you been collecting comics a lot before that, and that kind of just triggered transition from there?
Yeah, I was doing old comics, Silver Age and Golden Age, since about 96, 97. Was reading regular comics from throughout the 90s as a kid, and started with older comics, and then moved on to the art after, I would say, after I read Alex Ross's Kingdom Come.
Mm-hmm. Now, do you still have all the comics, or did you sell the comics to fuel your, art collection, or
they've come and gone. They've come and gone. I still have an extensive Golden Age and Silver Age collection, though. But some of them have come and gone. But no, I still have, unfortunately, quite a few comics, much to my wife's dismay.
Yeah, they do take up a lot of space.
Yeah, they sure do. They sure do.
I kind of the same story. Collected a lot of comics, but I've kind of whittled it down to about 2 or 3 long boxes and just one small box of the few really good things that I wanted to save forever. So it's like the long boxes one day I might part with, but this one sacred box that I keep in the storage over here that that I hope the kids will appreciate one day.
Right. And you know what it is? I've been going to the same comic shop since I was about 11 years old, and I want to make sure I keep supporting them. So yeah, even though the books take up a lot of space and a lot of people say just go digital, I feel like, I feel like I owe the comic shop, my gratitude for being open this long and, putting up with me for so many years. So
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
still keep reading the new ones.
No, that's good. I don't go to my local shop as much as I should. I really need to get out. I only make it out there about once a month. I don't know. I'm like a workaholic, and I never check them out. But I agree, and it was fun. I'm one of the people that I've got lined up for interviews in January is somebody local, and there was a shop that I used to go to as a kid that I couldn't remember the name of, and this guy was like, "Oh yeah, it was a comics. I can't remember, Superworld or something like that." So it just reminded me of how much fun I had, when I was in my early teens, going to, having my parents drive me around to comic shops that were local to where we grew up in Brunswick, Ohio.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
Good
no,
memories.
it's absolutely. So, we got a lot of people. So in the chat already, someone here said, still have my Larson War Fund 50 that anchored. So 5 years
indeed.
ago.
Sold a bunch of books about 5 years ago now to buy a big Golden Age book as well, actually. So, things keep coming and going as a lot of collectors do.
Oh no, trust me. Yeah, that's kind of the cycle to everything. I think is you can't keep every piece of artwork you own or every comic book that you own. You always kind of move it in and move it out, right?
Right. And I think, regarding comic shops, I think Dave Mandel had actually said that, he visits his comic shop regularly. And I think one of the great things about it is it exposes you to new artists. So a lot of times I'll look at the rack and, these will be titles, a lot of times from Image or Marvel that I've never heard of before. And you look through the art and you discover these artists that you otherwise would possibly never learn about. And you see how much talent is out there. So that's a great way to see the new talent as well, is to go to your shop. So support your shop, guys.
There you go. I know, with once COVID hit and everything, it's, everybody was worried about, free comic book day and the things that really were driving people into shops. And, all those Jim Lee auctions were just fantastic, raising money for local comic shops. Yeah. I'm not sure how well it all got dispersed, because I don't know too many shop owners, but the thing is that it had to have helped them get through the downtime when shops were closed.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, we're here in Ohio. They're actually debating. I got an email from my local bank saying, starting on Friday, the offices are closed. You can only get in by appointment. So I'm kind of concerned that we're actually kind of going into that cycle, maybe, where they might be locking down some businesses again, at least in Ohio. So that would be pretty unfortunate.
Right.
But
yeah, I think one thing comic shops really need to do is really be diverse in what they offer. So, making sure that they don't only focus on comics will make sure they stay open, because people having cabin fever, like my shop does a lot of games.
Mm-hmm.
They have so many games. So, by focusing on that, you have people sitting at home. They can't buy comics, they'll buy games, So being diverse in their offerings will make a big difference.
That's true. I mean, a lot of shops that are around here, are into gaming and card gaming, but that, the COVID restrictions and trying to keep their distance from the other card players made everything problematic, even there. And, like my kids play Pokemon professionally, basically. And so, they haven't had an event since February, because you're always across the table from somebody. So you can't.
Not safe. Right.
It's just not safe, unfortunately. So that's that's made it so much more challenging.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Well, with luck, once we have a vaccine, hopefully this will all be over by spring.
Hopefully so.
So yeah, you have a lot of friends in the chat tonight, Ankur.
I invited a lot of people.
Ken Carson says hey. Eric says hey.
Ken, hey Nick.
Oh yeah, I'm Nick Barucci. There we go.
Yeah. Another Jersey native, right?
Exactly. So let's see. Oh yeah, I'll see.
I'm trying to get Nick Contreras on here for you too, by the way, one day.
I have offered to buy Nick his own webcam, and so I agree. Someday he will. You know what? And one of the things, remember I mentioned at the start of this that we're thinking of slightly different formats for comic art chats, and going forward, is there are so many art groups out there that are focused on just individual artists, and Nick is a big part of that. The Sal Buscema group, for instance, and I think it would be really fantastic to do a show just on Sal Buscema and try to get like 3 or 4 people from that group, maybe Nick, maybe not, and just have a show based around, talking about our love for Sal Buscema. And that could go on and on and on, because there's just so many people that we could talk about. But that's one of the notes that we've kind of put together as far as an outline of things that we want to do in 2021, and just be more fun. I think that and getting this stuff down now. I mean, it's great to have the Facebook groups that are out there, but I think being able to put something on a video that we can kind of push out into lots of different audiences will just make Sal even more popular,
Right.
and preserve it for forever,
Right.
on YouTube or Facebook. Yeah, see there.
There he is, right?
I don't have a camera. One day, Nick. One day.
He has an iPad. That'll work.
That is true. That you could use, and even a phone. I mean, this platform does work with a phone. So let's see. Yeah.
Hey, Tatiana.
Oh, yeah. There we go. Very nice to see you, Tatiana, as well. Thank you for tuning in.
And Sal, he's done so much amazing work on so many levels that you could talk hours. So I
agree. And he's somebody and I know clearly he's up in age, and he's somebody that I've never met. I never saw him at a show. I think the last time he was at a show that I almost was able to go to was a Pittsburgh Comic-Con, and that was almost 10 years ago. And for some reason he was at it, and I ended up having to pass on that show. So I've never gotten to meet him, and he's definitely somebody I would have loved to have had the chance to talk with, or pick up a sketch from.
One of my stories about that is Herb Trimpy. I remember seeing him. Unfortunately, it was his last show. It was actually a week before he passed, and he had a huge line. I'd always seen him, and I said to myself, he has a big line. I'll catch him next time. That was a big mistake. That was a big mistake. So we have to make sure we support our older artists as well, because I don't know if you read the Giant Size X-Men tribute edition, but I remember reading in the back of that how Dave Cockrum couldn't find work late in his life. And, you think amazing artists like Dave Cockrum not being able to find work, it's quite sad.
Right. Oh, no, I completely agree. I mean, I was actually on his commission list, and, when he passed away. So there was, because I knew that it was like, I wanted to do like a cover quality commission. So it was something that he wasn't going to be able to get to right away. I paid for up front because I just was like, I know that he was on the convention circuit, but he wasn't well, and he wasn't doing anything published. So yeah, I know it's tragic. And with Herb, he was somebody that we had a big Wow Comic Fest one year, and I got to be the guy to pick him up at the airport, and
nice.
got to have a really nice chat with him and his wife. And I didn't pick up any art from him during the show, but exactly. I mean, it's those kinds of experiences that really make the hobby special for those of us who've collected comics, collect art, and are trying to pay it back to the people who really made that the hobby what it is for us today.
For sure. I mean, look at Ramona Fredone. She's just unbelievable. She's 95, and the drawings she's doing are amazing. I can't imagine it.
Oh, I agree. I love those the Magic Lasso lariat with the Donald Trump to tell the truth. Those were perfect.
Very controversial.
They were, but they made me chuckle every time. And I've saw I think Anthony did at least one interview with her at a show a few years back that he put on his channel, and that was really nice because I've actually never met her either. So yeah.
Being fortunate in the Northeast, the number of shows that normally happen here, we often see quite a few of these artists since they're so local.
Exactly. I know. I definitely regret having grown up, in the Midwest, because I'm so envious of all you guys in the tri-state area that, you got the great shops, all the artists are there. Well, if they're not on the West Coast.
You're not too far though.
No, you're right. If I drive pretty quickly, I can get there in about 8 hours. I've heard from Nick Katratis that he can probably do it in about 5 hours because he has a lead foot. He and I were chatting the other day while he was driving, and he was remarking how fast he was going. So,
I mean, I know a collector in Ohio, actually, James. He comes to every Comic Art Con, and he drives the entire time. So,
yeah, there are a lot. Yeah, no, there's quite a few art collectors in Ohio, especially in the Columbus area too. And that's we've mentioned here. I'm still have to reach out to the museum over at the Ohio State, but I'm going to try to set up some kind of an art get together in about a year in Columbus for a weekend, so we can work in a dinner, go to the Billy Ireland Museum, and that Marvel exhibit is supposed to be in Columbus too. So I think that'll be really fun. I know. So I'm friends now with Ben Saunders, who's done the coordination for the Marvel exhibit. Now it's just a question of me trying to work out something with the Billy Ireland Museum. So it'd be pretty nice maybe if we could do something there. As far as dinner, like see the museum, have dinner there, and make a fun weekend out of it. I think that would be.
Fingers crossed. Yeah, that'd be great.
Exactly. And the good thing for the guys, I mean, I know at least a dozen collectors in Columbus, so they won't even have to travel.
Right,
so,
that's awesome.
Yep, exactly. And Rich Cirillo is here, man.
Rich.
We have a full house this evening.
Yeah.
Sam, Columbus here. See, yep.
Hey, Ron's here too.
And Ruben says we should organize it with a softball game. Unfortunately, I believe that the Marvel exhibit is going to be in Columbus from mid-December until early March or somewhere around in there. So a softball game probably is out of the question unless we did it indoors. So I can't promise that, Ruben. I'm sorry to say. But yeah, maybe we can work something out and do something like that more in the summertime somewhere. Yep. Yes, and see, there you go. Nick says he can make it in 6.5
hours.
So there's lots of things I want to talk about. One thing is, I think you're one of the few collectors that actually has their own website. Back in the day when I started collecting and before there was CAF, a lot of collectors did have their own websites, and they used them for, hey, with a note that they're buying artwork and, put their want list out there. But a lot of guys did it, just as a way to put their collections out there, before it was CAF, and maybe they didn't want to use the I can't even remember the name of the old system that the Comic Art L used, but the one where you could only have 5 pieces at a time. Right. So I thought that, it's unique to see a collector still have it. And for those who don't know it, it's at faceittiger.com. And, it's got a lot of like your select pieces. So what's the impetus behind wanting to, have your own site as a collector?
Honestly, one day I just looked to see if Face It Tiger was available, and I was shocked that it was. So I'm like, you know what is it going to cost? It costs $50 a year. I'm like, you know what? That's cheap enough. Let's just do it. So I registered it, and it sat for a few months. And then one day I just decided I'm just going to put my gallery up here and go from there. And, it gets some traffic, nothing big, just something fun, something to kill the time, you could say. Right.
No, I wish, CAF is cool, but I always enjoyed seeing collectors have their own sites because, there's nothing wrong with it. I think if they have the time, I think more people should do it. I think it's fun. Yeah. It's good for the hobby. Anything that gets more comic art online is great for the hobby, and I think that, and it's so easy to do sites nowadays, whether it's through GoDaddy's own like simple platform with WordPress, or if you're using something like Wix or whatnot. I think collectors, it's something that I would definitely encourage collectors to do. Still use CAF, of course, but have your own website. I think it really does push the hobby out to more people, and then it'll expose people to that. Because I can't tell you how many times I run into conversations with people online or via email where I mention CAF, and they're like, "What's CAF?" So, CAF isn't, we'd like to think it's the end all be all perfect thing, but it's not at the end of the day.
Right.
I have found,
What's funny is some people I say Face It Tiger, and some of them get it immediately. Oh yes, Mary Jane. So I'm like, what does that mean, Face It Tiger? And I have to explain to them. So it's okay.
There you go. And Leslie, Brian Tidwell says, so sketchhound.com is
cool.
Make its debut in 2021. It should, right? Walt the Cliff guy had a site for a long time, and I think he still does. And I know he did like these small sketches. He had this commission concept where it was like a 3x3 inch type of thing. And I think those things are fun. I love stumbling into them, because one of my pastimes is Googling comic art and then different keywords all the time, just to kind of find and discover stuff for when I'm trying to do research. And I love stumbling on sites like that, because that's I forget what it was about Walt that made me find that, but I kind of bounced around from a couple different searches on artists and found that. And it's like, wow, we need more of that, or we need a resource that links out to everybody's their sites as well. But that's how I knew you had one, because you have that you have it listed in your calf profile.
Right. Yeah, it's easy to list there as well. So.
And there we go. That's John says calf is his main enabler, and has linked him up with other great people, and that's true. I love hearing that, John. Thank you.
Listen, there's collectors I've talked to that are like, yes, the first thing I do in the morning is check what new art is on calf. I'm like, okay, that's nothing wrong with that. That's okay.
Right? No. It's what I do, honestly. It's and I know it's I don't know. It's a blessing and a curse. And now with the whole with the want list stuff that we've been pushing out regularly, I spend more time on calf than I ever have, and it's I don't know, it's fantastic. Like I said, it's this whole last year when these were all very like timely updates that we did with us being trapped at home and everything, to be able to start pushing out the want list things and other stuff I did with the rep dealers and Comic Card Live. So I mean, it's a great. I've said it numerous times last couple months. It's a great time to be in the hobby. I think it really is, and being able to patronize. Nick Ferrucci says calf is a drug, a good one. Yes, I appreciate that. So also, Ankur, you are a mod on the Art Collecting Addict. It's
yes, group. On the Facebook group. Yes.
So how long has that been going
on? I think maybe about a year and a half or about 2 years now. Tatiana and we were friends for a while. I think we became friends through that group as well, and we were chatting. And at one point I said, if you need help, let me know. And she made me and another one of the members a mod, and just try to have some fun, keep it light. It's a closed group, so we make sure people behave well. So.
No, I know.
You're on it. You don't post too much though.
I know. I see every post because I set it to always get announcements. I mean, from your group and then the other group. But yeah, I know. I mean, I am on Facebook a lot, but I don't know. I don't post as much as I should. But I should definitely post more. And I don't have. I remember I was out of buying artwork for a very long time, and so and I was supposed to pick up a couple pieces on Sunday, which kind of fell through. So I'm hoping to be able to pick them up this coming Sunday. We'll see. But I'm trying to get back. I've got the desire, and I've got a little extra money finally, since my son's almost done with college. Even though I've got 2 more on the way, it's like one burden. One will almost be out of the way, and I can actually breathe again and buy art again. Yeah. So, yeah. But you actually updated your calf gallery this evening while I was I was kind of prepping for the show, and you popped up because you're one of my watch galleries, so it's always fun when I'm like there and it happens, because then I've got Anchor #1 underneath the watched, and Anchor, I'm sorry, Ankur. I apologize.
It's okay. It's all good.
You probably get that more often than you want.
Yeah, I stopped correcting people many years ago. It's okay.
Jason, you'll just have to wait. It's not an X-Men piece though, so you don't have to worry. I didn't pick something up that you haven't seen yet. But it's I will say it's a Frank Whiteley piece though. So and it's and it's not even something that I'm like totally attached to, but I love Whiteley's work, and I saw the piece before it went up on a dealer site, and I was like, yeah, I'll take it. I want to get started. This is a good place for me to start, because it's more about the art than it is about the book. But I'm going to go read the book now, because I don't know anything about the page. So I'm sorry. Let's see. 2 weeks in a row, Bill has mentioned he's going to jump back into art collecting. Thanks, Fred. It's not going to be trouble. Trust me, it will not. I was always a small time collector. As far as I'd say I was split between the lower end pages and just getting con sketches and things of that nature. I've never been a big time collector, but I appreciate art just as much as everyone else here. So Ankur, I know that you really do update your gallery almost as well, not as much as like say Paul P, who updates seemingly every day, but you update your gallery a lot. So you're always actively buying. I mean, do you do you actively sell as much as you buy? I mean, or do you're just always in kind of a buying mindset?
Always buying and selling, a bit of both. And what's interesting is this past year, some local people who have been out of the hobby or people who worked in the hobby have come to me to sell some pieces for them. So some pieces I have in my for sale gallery, almost half of the pieces are just consigned to me. So, it was just by coincidence that I joined a new company in late 2018. And one of the people who worked there worked for Marvel in the 90s. Wow. And he had a stack of art that was just basically sitting in a folio. And just said after a few months, he goes, yeah, you know what, I need to sell this. I have to pay some college bills, and just handed it to me, and I said, okay, and it was some amazing stuff, and I sold that for him, and he told another one of his friends, who told another one of his friends, and they said they had no issues, and it was a quick turnaround, so they just I just kept getting consignments that way. So never planned to do that, but it just ended up happening, So
Yeah,
just through word of mouth, kind of. So it worked out okay.
that's incredible. So, I mean, do you mind saying, I mean, what is your profession that got you into a place where somebody from Marvel worked?
So I actually work for an insurance company. I'm a clinical pharmacist for an insurance company, and we had a marketing person who was working there. He left the company now, but yeah, he worked under Stan Lee and Marvel in the early '90s. He worked with Jim Shooter and all these guys. So some of the stories that you hear are pretty funny. What you hear, and in fact, Charles Vess's Spider-Man book. I can't remember the
Mhm.
name of it. Good lord, it's probably behind me in my bookshelf. But he was the model for Peter Parker,
Oh, really?
the guy who I was working with, and it actually has a shout out to him in the book as well. So I remember when he told me that, I went to go pull out the book, and I was like, "Good God, you're right. That is you."
Wow.
The stories you hear were pretty interesting, I have to say. So
See, just another reason why I wish I would have grown up in your
right,
area.
right, right.
Just being able to hang out and meet some of these people, and
Yeah, it's
just
amazing.
right, all happenstance too. It's funny. I actually was somebody emailed me the other day, and I'm not even gonna try to get the name right, but it was somebody from who had a gallery, an art gallery in New York for comic art, which I had never heard of, and I feel stupid about it because that I never. It was called just Comic Art Gallery. It was open from, I believe, 77 to 1980, and the person didn't know how to use CAF to contact a gallery owner, so they used the support form saying, so and so, yeah, I'd love to talk about my experience at Comic Art Gallery. And I'm like,
Hmm.
what the heck is Comic Art Gallery? And so I Googled it a bit, and I found a post by Joe Jusko on Facebook that talked about where he bartended at a Bernie Wrightson exhibit at Comic Art Gallery in 1977, and it had this guy's name on it. So I'm like, wow, there could be a really cool story in this. So I'm emailing with the guy trying to figure out if I can't work out do an interview with him too, because it's funny. Again, it's something that was in Manhattan, and I don't know how I had never read anything about it, but going back to it, I've seen the images that they used to promote different exhibits I've seen before. So because they had they did a Wrightson, and what's the other show that was really big? I can't remember, but at any rate, something in the future
Yeah, it's
to
amazing.
have. Yep,
So they were
exactly.
they were only open 3 years, though, you said.
Only 3 years, and it's funny because when Jusko wrote about it, it sounds like a very really relevant time period for him, where he was getting to meet a lot of people, and that was a place that a lot of the 18 to 21-year-old artists were hanging out at, and but yeah, it had a very short lifespan. So, but odd that it would have been out there in '77. I mean,
Right, right, right.
I know that a few dealers have tried to do galleries in New York, but that's been more, in the last 15, 20 years.
Right,
Whereas, this is we're talking over 40 years ago.
right.
So, and I said, do you have photographs from the shows? And he's like, I've got everything. I've got tons of
Oh
photographs
wow.
from every show. I've got all the flyers. I've got all the PR pieces, and so yeah, I'm actually going to reach out to Jusko and see if maybe we either can't do it together or have him come in for at least a few minutes to chat about his experience bartending.
Those will be fun to see. We keep getting painful from those old comic art ads that people post up from
Oh,
the '90s.
exactly. I know. That's why I thought this would be great. I mean,
That'll
I
be a
should,
good change, right?
especially if he's got like prices listed and and that
Yeah.
sort of thing. So yeah, no,
So,
that'll.
but yeah, like you said about this area, you don't realize I'm trying to even think how I reach out to this person, but somebody who lives literally 20 minutes away, he handled Dave Cockram's estate. And he invited me over, and we looked through art. And again, he's not on CAF, he's nowhere on the internet really, but you look at his collection, and it's nothing but Cockram art covering all the walls.
Right.
And he was a personal friend, and he has all these sketchbooks. He'll pull out a sketchbook and show me sketch upon sketch upon sketch that Dave Cockram did just for him, and you're just like, oh my god, just your eyes pop out. You're like, you see some of the pieces he has on his walls. I had his prints as a kid, and he has the original on his wall. You're like, oh my God.
Right,
It's,
right.
it's amazing what's around here. You never know. That's just it.
Exactly. Wow. And I know that, and that's the great thing of, that as big as you think CAF is, CAF probably doesn't even encompass 5% of the artwork that's out there. And there are many collectors who prefer to remain anonymous. They're older. They're never going to get into scanning or photographing their artwork. So no, that's fantastic to know that those things are still out there. And one day, you'll probably see some of that stuff, but probably a long ways off. So is that the person? I remember, I don't know, I'm on some email list for somebody selling stuff from the Cockrum estate, but it's usually comic. Okay,
Yeah,
that's him.
he has his whole comic collection as well, and as well as other items. But the art, most of it is his own personal collection that he doesn't want to sell, unfortunately.
Right. No. Yeah, I don't know how. I think I got on his list because I was helping him promote, whatever they were trying to sell right after Dave passed. But and so it seems like once a year, I think an email comes out kind of outlining some more Dave's estate that he's trying to help move for them. So no, I always share them on CAF. It's like who wouldn't want to own a few books from
Absolutely.
I agree. So was it Rich says was it Spider-Man Spirits of Earth?
That was it. Spirits of Earth. Yep. He was the model. And Ruben asked, was he in administration? I think he was actually a writer. The person was actually a writer for Marvel.
No, that's pretty cool. That's
and the 90s had a lot of people come and go, so that's part of the industry, I guess, during that time.
So any other weird run-ins with collectors in the New York area that you care to elaborate on?
Well, there was one other collector, and I think Nick Contratis actually met him too. I saw a listing of a garage sale for, comics for sale, comics. And so, of course, it was 10 minutes away. So how can you not go? So I went to go check it out, and I'm looking through the boxes, mostly modern stuff. And he's like, yeah, I actually collect art. Young guy, my age. And he's like, oh, you like art? I said, yeah. I said, why, do you collect? He goes, yeah, I do. I have a collection. And he goes, let me go show you some. Pulls some stuff out, and oh my goodness. I mean, it wasn't like old stuff, but it's stuff from the 90s, very nostalgic period. So he had some Turner covers that have never been seen. He had some McFarlane pages and other stuff, and I was like, good God. And of course, none of it was for sale. But he actually did consign some, cheaper pieces with me because he said, I'd like to move some of these. I said, sure, I'll sell them for you, no problem. So some of the pieces that I have in my gallery are his, in fact. So you just build a connection like that. He says, the Eternals will be last to go, and I said, yeah, I have a friend Tatiana. I know she's listening. I said, I'll give her a call when the time comes.
Right. No, those will be in high demand, but Tatiana should get first crack at them.
Yes, absolutely.
Sure. No, there's no Beer Turner fan, that's for sure.
Yep.
Well, that's we don't get that here in Ohio. There's never an ad in Craigslist for comics for sale or anything like that. Unfortunately.
No, not even comics at a garage sale.
Not really, but it's funny. In my local paper, which I hadn't been subscribing to it for a long time, but when COVID started, we picked up the local paper again, and there is actually an ad in the classifieds for some guy that wants to buy comics. And I forget what and like maybe toys and stuff and things of that nature. But it was just funny reading it that here and I live in the country, so to see an ad for somebody who just wants to get he's looking for comics. That was number one on his list. He's looking for silver, anything vintage. So yeah, but
it's like American Pickers. You never know what you can find, right?
Right. Well, as collectors, I know that, I've learned, especially through doing these interviews, that everybody's got their special angle on how to, dig up artwork. And I'm sure there are probably other collectors that have classified ads in their local paper. I mean, in Columbus, if you were to open up whatever their paper is, there might be an ad in there that just says, hey, comics, comic art, collectibles. Why not? Right. At the end of the day, classified ads are pretty cheap.
And you never know.
Right, you never know what you might turn up. I mean, it'd probably be more profitable doing it in the in the tri-state area, but why not, right? I mean, and I've heard there's lots of other angles that guys do as far as like researching the odder listing places like not Craigslist, but just different places in that vein that are more local And yeah, you never know what you're going to turn up. Let's see. Oh, yeah. Tatiana says it's always exciting to see the black hole stuff. That's very true.
And what's amazing is these collectors who've, they bought this stuff maybe 10 years ago. And when they ask, what should I price this? And you tell them the price, they're like, really? I paid $100 for this. It's amazing. You never realize it. So the one piece I posted in my calf gallery today, it was a Dave McKean painting. Turned out it's a collector who literally lives 3 blocks away from me.
Oh, really?
And again, he hasn't collected art in a number of years. He's collected other art, not comic art, but he had a bunch of stuff, and we did some trades for illustration art in this case. So it's crazy how many how densely packed this area is.
Well, that was a really I'm actually gonna let's see. I want to pull that piece up because I saw that it was really nice.
Yeah,
I can actually add. There you go. That is Ankur's post this evening.
Yep. Might be some glare. I think I have to rescan that. I think I just took a quick picture of my cell phone, so there's some glare on.
Sorry, my mic cut out there, but no, it looks good.
Yeah.
Pull this back out.
Thank you, Tatiana.
Oh, she was involved in that?
I asked her, I said, what are your thoughts on this piece? And she actually knew exactly who owned it. I was like, good God, how small is this? How small is this hobby that she's in California? This guy's 2 blocks away, and she knows exactly who owns it. So.
Right. Well, or that just tells you how well connected Tatiana is.
That's true too.
Because I will admit, everybody thinks that the hobby is really gigantic, but it's fairly it's not as huge as everybody might think it is or like it to be. But yeah, it's Tatiana, I think, is very well connected.
She's the boss for sure.
Yeah. And Jason is giving you props for being a bloodhound in the area.
We try.
Well, and you were both on Anthony's panel that day too. I forgot about that. I remember.
Yeah.
I didn't get to see you on it. I saw Jason, and then I had to cut and do something else. But yeah, that was fun. And
Anthony's is always fun, and he's one of the guys who does this for a living. So when he told me that he's going to have this, I'm like, yeah, I'll come by. Got to support the guys who do this as an everyday thing, So he has his folders have a treasure trove of stuff. So.
Oh yeah.
If you guys are ever in the tri-state, definitely check his warehouse out. You can spend days in there looking just at art. Forget the comics, just at art. You can spend days.
Yeah. No, I actually talked to Anthony after. Well, it was last week because he's been wanting to do some kind of regularish show with me, and I never really knew what to do. And I didn't really pitch him a show with me per se, but I said, well, maybe we could do like a twice a month show where it's a lot like what you did in that panel, where you can do an art sale that evening, stuff you hold back, you just show there, and we invite some of your clients to be a part of it too. And then, but it's open ended though, maybe you and Jason are part of the stream in some way, not necessarily there, but we're doing it here. But anything that he's doing in his live sale is open to anybody who's watching the chat, and not do it every week, so it would be like overkill. But even once a month would be fun. It would just be something different that we could all do together. And Anthony certainly has like you said, he's got the inventory to do it. He's always got product coming in and out, so he can always set some things aside that he knows will generate interest. So.
There's a local show that we have that he actually sets up, and that's once a month, and that would be a perfect venue, but that's between you and him.
Right. Well, exactly. So we'll see. I like Anthony a lot. We couldn't figure out what to do, and then but after I saw his panel, I was like, that was a really good idea.
That was fun, right?
Yeah, exactly. So we pulled some images out from your gallery. Is it okay if we kind of pull a few of them up and chat about them?
Yeah.
All right. Let's see here. All right. How about this Adam Hughes Batgirl cover?
So this was from the collection of Tim Townsend. And what's funny is I had emailed him maybe a couple of years ago about it, and I never heard back. And for some reason, I emailed him in, I think it was January or February of this year, just to ask how it was going, if it's something he wanted to move. And by chance, he said he would. So I threw an offer, and it worked out. And it's here framed on my wall right now. And this was one of the best pieces I picked up this year.
No, I thought this one was beautiful.
Yeah,
Yeah.
always love this image.
Well, I'm surprised, you were able to shake this from Timm. Timm's, I always
Yeah.
thought, I always pictured Timm's collection as like never leaving his hands. I
Right.
remember he's got a fantastic collection of stuff that he's inked too. But I mean, I think of
Yep.
some of the burn pieces he's got.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's got an amazing collection. And
And there's some stuff he won't part with. This was one that I guess it was just the right timing. It just just ended up happening. So
well, that was a good pickup. And just to answer Timm's question here, he used to have a show with Carbonero, but I think that they stopped doing that. It was selling heroes. I think what happened with COVID, the production company that was managing the show for him went out of business. And from what I understand, Anthony has hired at least the editor from that company, and that's the person that's helping him do his daily. I think he's doing a daily show or something. I haven't been able to catch too many of them, but I know that he's doing something. So he brought this guy in because he shot hours and hours and hours of footage, interviews with people, and the production company never put it together for him. So he's hired this guy to kind of take all that inventory and put it into things that he can put on Facebook and stuff like that. So let's see. Oh, and I kind of alphabetized these by artist name when I was pulling them up. So this is another Adam Hughes piece, Wonder Woman cover. This is fantastic. I love this image.
Yeah, I think this was one of the first times her golden armor was used on a cover. It was introduced by Alex Ross in Kingdom Come, but this is one of the first times it was used. This also came from a local collector in New York who hasn't been collecting much, and I kept in touch with him and just loosely asked. This was last year, I think I picked this up, or it may have been 2018 now, and just asked if this is something he would part with, and he said sure, and we worked out an agreement, and the rest is history. And this piece is actually huge. I mean, I don't even have a folio that would fit this. I think the actual art itself is probably 18 by 24 or even larger than that, actually. So,
wow.
Yeah, this is one that I have to definitely frame. I just ran out of wall space, unfortunately.
Now, is the logo, is it on an overlay, or is that?
Yes. Yeah,
okay.
the logo and the DC, that whole area, and I think the text also is on an overlay.
Okay, good. That's,
Awesome.
yeah, that I was hoping that was going to be the answer. Yeah, I never like it when the logos are affixed to the cover. So no, overlays are great.
Right. And I think in the published image, the one thing that you kind of lose are the detail in the skulls that she's on, like towards the bottom of the piece. Mm-hmm. The detail in person is amazing. Adam does such a great job of capturing that.
And that's one thing about Adam's art that I really appreciate, and it's something I don't notice all the time, but in a piece. But if I go back and look at a piece a second time, I see details like that. I love, like especially like during Comic Art Live when he had those pieces for sale from the Hellboy book. There were lots of really subtle areas that were packed with detail, because you think of him as such a fluid. His the way he draws women is in a very fluid line. It seems so simple. The way he draws their eyes, their nose, their lips, and everything. And then he gets into these areas like those skulls, like you're mentioning, that where he just puts this infinite amount of detail in it. A lot like that previous piece, where you can tell there's a lot of cross hatching, a lot of work in that one. Just pull it back up.
He's an amazing artist in many ways. So much more than I think he gets credit for. So it's a lot more than just the women he draws. So.
Oh yeah, without question. But that's one of the things, that it's funny that I didn't notice for the longest time, and then after I did it, I was like, wow, he really does this in almost everything he does, where there's this real, really tightly packed, very detailed work. No.
Yep, for sure.
Thank you for pointing that out too, because it's something that I've appreciated as well. And this piece is Alex Saviuk.
Saviuk, right? So a lot of pieces in my collection, specifically Mary Jane related, I have to thank Brian Peck for either pointing them to me or trading them to me or somehow being involved. So this actually came from him. We did a trade, and this was a piece I always loved, and it's framed on my wall right now, in fact. So this was in Parallel Lives, and I think it was the second time that this image was ever published after Spider-Man 42. So unfortunately, that page is not one I'll ever be able to get. So this was a great consolation prize, and it's beautifully drawn as well, and it's a full page splash of this image as well. So
that's beautiful. And it was funny, while I was browsing your gallery yesterday and today, I saw a lot of thanks to BP. So I'm
Right.
assuming
Brian.
Brian's had your back every now and again, right?
Yeah, quite often. And yeah, he's somebody I've known from back to the comic art L days. So it's been a number of years that we've known each other. So it's been great.
No, well, it's always good when collectors have each other's, backs when they
Yep.
know you're looking for something. I think that's one of the greatest things about the hobby. I mean,
Yep.
since I've been doing these things, I've had a few people email me when they see something for Elementals or Dungeons and Dragons I might be interested in. I think that, but if I hadn't put it out there and let people know, it wouldn't come back. So that's great
Right.
that Brian's doing that for you.
Yeah.
All right, on this piece here, this is a Sienkiewicz piece. Now I put the reason
Yep.
I put the photo with you in there because I didn't realize the scale of the piece until
Yeah.
I saw that picture of you. I mean, that's amazing.
Yeah. I think it's 20. It's right here next to my desk. It's actually 24 by 36. And this also, Brian Peck saw this posted on Graphic Collectibles and emailed me immediately saying this is for sale. And I had been looking for this for a few years, so the timing worked out perfectly. And immediately jumped all over it, and thankfully was able to purchase it. This was in 2005, I think I bought this one. And a couple people always email me to sell this, and I was like, I can never sell this piece. I'm sorry. If there's one piece I keep in my collection, this would probably be it.
Yeah, no, it's beautiful. Did you frame it, or was it framed when you bought
Yeah,
it?
no. I had a custom framed, museum glass, everything. It wasn't framed for a number of years, but when I finally had the wall space in my office, I said, I'm not going to skimp on this one. So
No, you definitely went all out on that one.
yeah.
All right, and I did skip one here, but this is a Don Heck detective title page.
Yes, purchases a number of years ago. I honestly don't even remember where I bought it, but it was probably less than $400 or $500 at the time, since it was in the early 2000s. But yeah, I always loved Batgirl. Not sure why, but I think it has to do partially with the animated series. The nostalgia for the animated series helped, and this piece came available, and was priced reasonably at the time, so jumped all over that one too.
I'm a big
Unfortunately, you don't see too many of these now.
No, not at all. I love Heck's work though, so this is a beautiful example of his work for sure.
Right, and I really wonder where all these early pages have gone. I hope they weren't destroyed, but don't see too many covers. Forget it, but splashes and things like that, you don't see too many either.
No, that's why. Yeah, when I saw this piece, I was like, wow, you don't see enough of it. Trying to think who I'd seen have a few interior pages from recently when I was in their gallery. I'll have to go back and look around, but
Yeah.
I thought somebody had a couple really nice interior, more like 6-panel kind of
Yeah.
pages. Let's see, and a fantastic Bruce Timm image. Very memorable. I think you use it as, something. This is in your avatar too, I think, right?
Yeah. So this was I think 2006. I think this was the first commission Bruce ever did. I had contacted Albert asking about a commission, and he told me Bruce doesn't take commissions, and I threw a number out, and Albert added a couple $100 to it, and I said fine. And after that, it kind of a lot of other people signed up, but this was one of the first commissions he ever did, basically. And I picked this up at the New York Comic Con in 06. It was. Yeah, this is also framed on my wall. Bill, did I lose you?
Nope. Sorry about that. I had a little.
I thought I lost you. Okay.
No. We had I remember I told you we had a little power outages going on around here, and everything just blipped, and I had to reset things. I apologize.
Okay. I thought it was me. Okay, no problem.
No, so you didn't. One thing I was saying, and when I blipped out, was I think it's Albert's birthday today. At least it says so on Facebook. So that's I didn't realize you got that through him. But yeah, we can all wish Albert a happy. He's probably 50 years old today. But that's I've seen. I know that Bruce doesn't. Well, he does take. I've heard him take a few commissions here and there. But I always love the fact the big art drops that Albert gets to do from Bruce a couple times a year. It's always fun. I mean, they're usually I guess angled around San Diego Comic Con.
Right.
But no, it's Bruce can do no wrong at the end of the
Right.
day. And yeah,
Hopefully I can meet him one day. He doesn't come out to the East Coast much, so hopefully one day I can make it out to the West Coast to meet him.
yeah, yeah. So have you ever been to San Diego Comic-Con?
I have not, no.
Oh,
No. I guess
well.
when the kids are older, definitely.
Yeah, yeah. No, well, that's definitely, yeah, it's a fun show. It's as far as it's a comparable show to New York, that's for sure.
Right.
But they definitely have their different feels for the artists. I mean, now that they've got two big shows on each coast, like you said, Bruce Timm doesn't come out east too often, but there's people who you're only going to get at New York that aren't going to go to San Diego too often either.
For sure. Yeah, having New York so close, though, it kind of like, do I really need to go to San Diego when New York is so close?
Exactly. I don't blame you. That's why, I started going to New York Comic Con. I didn't go to San Diego for the 3 years prior to the COVID cancellation one. I was going to New York because it's a little more convenient. It's a lot cheaper to travel to and stay in too. The hotels are much cheaper.
Are they in New York? I didn't imagine that.
Hard to imagine, right? Exactly. But no, I mean, in San Diego, you're doing well if you can get a room for under $500 a night,
Oh, gosh.
and not have to walk a long distance. And
Right.
and that's when I go to the show, usually I'm helping a dealer, so I'm always on my feet, and I don't want to wait.
Right.
All right, let's look at some more art. Gabriel Delato.
Gelato, yeah. So this was a variant cover to Secret Wars. Again, a homage to the Face It Tiger image. Loved this image when I saw it. I actually missed out on this piece when it was first offered by his rep. And I guess apparently the person who bought it wasn't able to complete the transaction. So about, I think almost a year afterwards, it was offered to me again. And of course, I had to buy it. So it seems like it's funny with art. It seems like if some pieces are meant to happen, they're going to happen. But sometimes it takes a bit longer than you would like it to.
Oh yeah, no, I completely get that. But no, this piece was definitely meant to be owned by you.
Yeah, and this piece is beautiful. The way Delato drew her face, everything was just beautiful on it. So.
What was the size on that one?
11 by 17. I have that frame too somewhere else in the house.
Okay. And this is a Tusca Iron Man page.
Yep. So this one also, it was, I think at one point Cool Lines had this and it was marked sold. And then Mike Berkey had it and it was marked sold. And it popped up on CAF. And, I'd emailed Mike about it, but he told me it was already gone. So the collector who bought it, I said, if you ever decide, let me know. And, a few months later, he says, I, need to raise some money. And, he offered me, more than what he paid for it. But, I agreed and thrilled to have it. And this is up on my wall too. And actually, a few months after I bought it, he asked if I would sell it back to him. I'm like, I'm sorry, I really don't want to sell it now. So, but, it's just, again, so sometimes you miss a piece because the dealer had it, it's sold, but it finds a way to come back to you.
Exactly. No, that's a good story. And clearly they had a little remorse in selling it, right? I mean, that always happens. I mean, at the end of the day,
with prices, how they're going up, it's like anything I say to people, anything you bought yesterday, you might not be able to afford tomorrow. Just
right. I know. I was doing one of the market reports last week, and the top selling dealer item was the page one splash to New X-Men 114. The first Quitely and Grant Morrison issue. And Albert, at least as his asking price that it sold for, was $15,000. I own the cover to that.
Oh, nice.
And I bought it for $3 and sold it for $5.
You owned. Did you still own it? Okay.
No, I wish I still
Right.
owned it. Yeah, no, that was one of my my poor decision to open that mini golf. I ended up selling a lot of art. That was like one of the pieces I held on to for the forever. I was like, I'm not going to sell it. I'm not going to sell it. But at the end of the day, I had to. And I look at it now and I'm thinking, man, I totally screwed myself on that one. But what are you gonna do?
That's one of the hard things that I guess dealers and collectors both face is everyone's afraid to, when you're selling, nobody wants to underprice, and when you're buying, nobody wants to overpay. But if it's a really nice piece, can you really overpay? I don't know. It's one of the questions we're always discussing.
No, not at all. I mean, because if you like it that much, that if the longer it sits out there, the more likely someone else is going to like it just as much as you. So yeah, I agree. And there's nothing you can do about it. I mean, the way the hobby's going, you're always going to have regrets on things like that. I even saw an interior page I probably sold for like $500 from that same book that Albert, I think, has priced for 4,500 on his site. So it's like, yeah, you just can't win, right? At the end of the day, you can just keep buying, Now, yes, I really like this piece. This Kerry Gamble index, for Marvel Index for Spider-Man. I just love the back and front cover concept of all the women in his life. One side being the other heroes, and then just the other women in his life. I thought it's just a beautiful piece.
Yeah, actually, also was once held by Brian Peck. He traded it to another dealer, and I traded the dealer a couple Frazetta sketches for it because I loved the piece. Actually, I think it was never published. I think it was, I don't know if this issue, they stopped with issue 6 or what happened, but this image was never published, and I don't know why, because it's an amazing image. But yeah, this is absolutely beautiful, and the cover is also on an overlay, so it's really, really perfect.
Wow, that's unfortunate that it's not published. I mean, I didn't know that, but no, I love this image of all the pieces. Wow.
For a nerd, Peter definitely had a lot of women in his life.
Right, exactly. Well, that's why we all, wanted to be Peter Parker growing up, right? Michael Avila says he loves it too, and it's true. I really, this is a fantastic image.
Yeah.
All right, this is an X-Men piece by Jim Lee and Wyzek from X-Men 11.
Yep. So this was at Comic Art Con in 2016, I want to say. And Albert had this in his portfolio, and I just remember looking at it, and at the time it was priced strong, and now of course it was an absolute steal. But I remember I actually asked him, "Would you mind if I show this to a friend of mine?" And in the show, and he said, "Yeah, sure, go ahead." And I showed it to him. He goes, "Well, Scott Williams didn't ink it." So I'm like, I said, "Yeah, but look at that center panel, man." And he goes, "Yeah, it's okay." So I bit the bullet and went for it, and I'm glad I did, because I couldn't buy this today for for less than probably 30K or so for how much things gone.
Oh no, I completely agree. That I'm sure. So was it a piece that he had, when you say it was in his portfolio, was it actually for sale at the show?
It was for sale, yeah. He actually, Albert told me it belonged to Jim, so but it was in actually a Comic Link auction, I found out afterwards. So I'm not sure, maybe Jim bought it at the auction, or maybe Albert just bought it. Maybe he forgot who it belonged to. So but yeah, it wasn't it never made his website. So I think if it made his website, it would have gone pretty quick. So
right. It's been great since Albert's been retired, because he does so many regular updates now.
Right.
It seems like every month we get a new art drop from Albert. Yeah. But he's probably forgotten more art that he has than most people. So let's see. This is art trim piece. This is beautiful.
Yep, this was what was this, 2016? So I met Stanley at New York Comic Con in 2015. And I talked to him about a commission, and he said, "I'm not taking them." And I said, "Okay, if you ever decide, let me know." And I messaged him afterwards on Facebook, and he agreed. And this was the most I've ever spent on a commission. This was 3,000, and it's actually still the most I've ever spent on a commission, to be honest with you. But it just turned out amazing. So no regrets there. And I don't think he even takes these at this point. I don't think he has the time to take these now. He's so busy with cover work, and a lot of his work is now digital as well. So I was glad that I got him when I could. So
yeah, no, his work is in high demand, right? I mean, as far as like variant covers, and I mean, I think as an artist, he prints a lot of his own variant covers now, right? He's kind of basically got his own market, and that's one of the things I hadn't paid a lot of attention to in the last few years, but it's become very obvious that there's a huge market on variant covers that are. I knew that shops did them. I just didn't realize that artists were doing their own. I've talked to Mike Mayhew about it, and a few other artists, and I'm just surprised. But I mean, there's a clear, variant covers are all about the artist, so it makes sense that artists would do their own. So it gives them full control over everything: the pricing, the shipping, whether they're going to get graded.
Right. And Stanley also, he has a school, so he teaches a lot of students. A lot of those students are now become artists. I mean, Derek Chu was one of his students, I believe. He does cover work for DC as well. So he's teaching a lot of great talent out there as well. So that's he's a busy guy. Art Trim's a busy guy.
Yep, Tatiana says that's lovely. I think Tatiana raced to Stanley's table and struck out one time in San
Oh
Diego.
no, she got a Batgirl last one, I think.
Did you? Oh, see, well,
Yeah.
I'm thinking of a different story then.
Right.
Sorry, Tatiana, I'm telling stories. But she did say it's a 3K is
Right.
now is a steal. Yep.
Right. Right. Yeah. It's 11 by 17 in cover quality, so for sure.
All right. I do have one other piece here. It was that Warner Roth X-Men page.
Yep. Yep. This was in the Heritage auction in 2015. I saw this somewhere before, whether it was on eBay or on Comic Art Fans, and went to auction and loved this page with the whole team and the Danger Room sequence. So I think Warner Roth is one of those artists whose work is still very reasonable. Still, you can get a nice Silver Age page for the low four figures. This was a great example.
Yeah, no,
I
I agree.
always loved the X-Men. So
yeah, you can't do wrong with an early X-Men page, and I've seen Warner Roth pages still, like you said, they go in the low fours, which is surprising, given that I think he I like his work as well, and X-Men was always my book. So, and I don't own anything from that period at all. But I would probably start with a Warner Roth page.
Right. Yeah, they're still very reasonable, obviously, compared to Kirby. That's hard to buy Kirby right now.
All right. Yes, Tatiana did confirm she got
Did you get the
Batgirl,
Batgirl? Yeah.
although she has struck out plenty.
We all have, right? I remember that 2015 New York Comic Con I went to. I walked into Artist Alley not prearranging a single thing, and I was pretty upset. I walked out with like 2 prints because every artist I went to said, "Yeah, my list is full. My list is full." I was like, "It's Thursday, the first hour of the show. How is your list full?" Like, "Oh, we booked a month ahead of time." So, when I would chase commissions, I basically started emailing people in March or April about New York Comic Con to get on their list. Sometimes that's how far in advance you have to go.
Right. No, I've heard that same story too, and it's unfortunate, but I mean, when you're that high in demand, and
Right.
and you've got reps that can or agents that can maybe handle all the logistics and maintaining the lists, that is how it goes.
Yeah.
No, see, good strategy, but I had the same thing happen. I mean, I went. It was probably 6 or 7 years ago when I went down there maybe later in the afternoon because it was always such a walk to get over to Artist Alley at New York. And same thing, you get over there and you can't get on anybody's list.
And it's a sea of people to get through anyone either. It's so crowded. It's not easy.
Right. No, it's like walking from one end of the hall at San Diego. You only want to do it a couple times during the show. You don't want to do it every day.
Right. But the good thing is a lot of artists have, portfolios of published art that, a lot of times is pretty reasonably priced that you can find. So there's some good diamonds in the rough out there.
Oh yeah. Yeah. No, I met a few artists there at the last show the year before last, and saw some of the published stuff that they had, or some pre-drawn painted stuff, and I ended up basically commissioning them to do pieces that they didn't have with them or they had already sold. So no, it's always still good to approach the artist and ask them, whether or not they'd be willing to do take home work and whatnot, because I paid the guy there, and I had the pieces like 2 weeks later. So it was, you never know unless you ask, right?
Right. So what one question I'll ask you, since I know you do a lot of the market reports, everyone's, I know, always concerned about what direction the hobby's going, and so far it seems like the last 10 or 20 years it's been going straight up. Everyone says, how can it continue? When is the bubble going to burst? And then people say, oh, we've been talking about the bubble burst for 20 years and nothing has happened. So, you have to say nothing continues to go straight up. And one conversation I was having with another collector is that, for the fine art market, it's also gone up quite, exponentially.
Right.
But I think the difference with the fine art and in kind of the illustration art market is that there's so many different venues. There's so much other things you can collect, which I think there is with comic art as well. But with the older stuff going up, the newer stuff is also, jumping in prices as well, where some modern covers from artists you can get for less than 5,000 to 10,000. So, a lot of collectors are saying, I started collecting 3 years ago and I'm already priced out. I can't afford anything that I like anymore.
Yeah. No, it's true. Where do I think? I mean, I don't think there's any end in sight with the increase in pricing, for good or bad, unfortunately. Because I've done the market reports since the June before last, but I've always really watched market data for quite some time. I've worked with Heritage on that for very like at least 13, 14 years. And I just think that there's still speculation in the hobby, which does drive up some of the pricing, certainly. But I just think that a lot of the artists and their, whether on their own or through an agent, they've done much better jobs marketing themselves than they did 12, 15 years ago. And so that's why we're seeing more modern art sell for higher art prices than what we would have expected to see, 15 years ago. And I think it's just, it seems like every week there's a new, or not every week, every other week there's a new art rep out there. So the thing is, there's more people marketing the work, and then on top of all of that, the network of agents that are out there that are pushing the newer work. There's more auction houses kind of getting into experimenting with original comic art sales, or that are just having these large event things over this year in particular. Wrapped around Comic Art Live, we had 3 major auctions ahead of it, and then I think there were there were 2 big auctions after it. And you look at Heritage, they're doing signature auctions almost every 2 months now. Yeah. For original comic art. And over in Europe, Daniel Megan Gallery just had a really large auction that where they were just under, I think, 2 million US in sales, and that was mostly European art. So I just think that we're in a really interesting point where people who were collecting comics and reading comics in the 70s and 80s are what's really guys my age and a little bit older are driving the prices up, because we're in our early to mid 50s. We have expendable income now, and I think that's helping things a lot. And I think just a lot of the younger collectors are buying up the newer artwork. I mean, and by younger, I mean like mid 30s, and so there's a lot of well-paying jobs out there that can allow them to afford and drive the price of a modern cover from that someone's repping into that $12,000-$13,000 range, or $15,000 range, or heck, if it's just Jim Lee cover, it could be $30,000, right, or more. So I mean, it just is what it is, because I'm priced out of things that I'd like to buy too. I mean, it's very I'm envious of watching certain collectors' galleries where they're always able to just pull out something new that is a mid 4-figure piece, and seeing that happen like on a weekly basis. But that's a lot of those people have they have the collateral from having been collecting for the last 30, 40 years. So their collections have all gone up in value, so they've got that financial engine behind them to keep driving the prices up. I mean, you just look at the con sketch market, how that's changed in 15, 16 years. I mean, you used to be able to go in and get on somebody's sketch list for $200 and get a really nice drawing, and now you're lucky if you can that same drawing is going to go for at least $1,000, right. And you'll be lucky if you even get on the list. And so I don't know. I mean, it's it's a good problem to have if you're a collector who's been in the hobby for a long time. But like you said, newer collectors definitely get priced out. And the problem with newer collectors too is, as a new collector, and I hear this a lot. A lot of people get discouraged because they overbuy. They pay too much too early. They don't really know the ins and outs of the hobby, and kind of put themselves in a bad position. So they end up being disenchanted with the hobby early on. And I can see that happening more and more quickly, as the pricing has progressed. But
right, I guess the good thing is that there's different collecting points for everyone. So like you said, there are thankfully sketch covers you can still get for a couple $100, but there's not too many. But I would also say, if you're able to go to shows and you see dealers who have things set up, look through their folios, because you'll often find pages under a couple $100, or under, especially with artists as well. You'll find pages under 500 or under 200 in some cases. Now, it might not be the gorgeous splash of the entire X-Men team, but it might still be something that's nice and visually appealing. What when John said about COVID and if it's affected, John Slaughter said about COVID and if it's affected pricing. it seems like it's only driven up demand because people are sitting home and have free
Right.
time, and those people who are working from home still have, job security. So now all of a sudden they're not paying for commute or gas or eating out, and somehow all of a sudden they have extra money and things
Right.
just
Right.
pay for more.
Right. Well, I don't know who I was talking with recently, but I kind of said, what we have right now is okay. So you're not spending money to go to San Diego, like those $500 hotels that you have to spend for 6 nights. That's $3,000. Airfare is another $800 back and forth from here. So and then food. I'm spending almost $5,000 to go to San Diego Comic-Con.
Before you
Now
start putting the show.
before I even get in the show. And so there's, my budget would never have been 5,000. I might, I've taken $3,000 to San Diego, when I was in my heyday. So you look at it now and it's like, wow, I've got another $5,000 to spend, with an art rep or a dealer or between other collectors. And I think that's what's, driving the market since COVID started, is the fact that, there's no travel expenses. We're all saving that, and we can go. So we're driving the prices up. And
Yeah,
it's all for the better. I mean, at the end of the day,
Right.
I mean, I think is that, in a lot of cases that money is going directly to the creators when you're buying from a rep and whatnot. So I think that's fantastic. I think, artists deserve, and the writers and everybody who puts work into comics, they deserve to make that money. But I think we're our own worst enemy here as far as, and as long as COVID keeps us from traveling, and that could be another year. I foresee the trend staying in that direction. And even when it ends, I don't know. I don't think it's gonna. I think we're really on a trajectory where it's not gonna stop.
No, and I think that first big show after COVID, I think the dealers are going to be exhausted for the amount of demand that there's going to be, because people are pent up and wanting to get out, and once it's safe to go out, they're going to be overwhelmed.
Right, exactly. And like John says, dealers, they're not going to cons either. So
Right.
there's it is, and we're at a point now where I do hear stories of collectors who are getting out of the hobby after having been in it for more like 15, 20 years, and dealers are picking up large collections, and it's happening with more frequency too. So we're getting more art on the market that is being funneled through dealer sites rather than going to cons. And it's changed the landscape, certainly. And there was so much fear going into COVID. I mean, I was scared at that point in my life. I was contemplating getting a job at the beginning of the year because things weren't, CAF wasn't really like growing like I had wanted, and I was like, this might be the year I might have to do this, and CAF is like my second thing. And COVID hit, and everything changed. I mean, almost immediately. I needed, a lot of dealers needed help because they were like, I want to do more online, and things started picking up a CAF because it's been phenomenal in its own way that such a crisis has changed our hobby so dramatically.
So how can the average collector, how can we support CAF more, because you really are the hub for the hobby, it feels like. So what can we do to support you and the website more?
To me, it's just keep using it, keep sharing links socially, as long as CAF stays relevant. I mean, my biggest fear, and the thing that we used to, CAF was really big. CAF still is really big. I shouldn't say it like that. About 6 or 7 years ago, I could show you stats where we were so busy. The site, I mean, I was having to buy a new server like every 2 years because not the growth and needing more server space. I needed more horsepower. And it was problematic because back then I didn't have as many premium members, and I wasn't charging enough for advertising, which I still don't at the end of the day. But it was very challenging. And what happened around 6 or 7 years ago was really was Facebook. Technically, a lot of people started using that for their groups, and so they were spending a little bit less time on CAF. But they were still adding all their art there, but their time spent was happening over on Facebook. They were doing more socializing over there versus spending their time on CAF. And so and at the end of the day, it was kind of fine. I mean, I've had my current database server for the last 5 years. I'm actually placing an order for a new one tomorrow. And they're not cheap. They're like, trust me, this new one is it's going to cost me around $6,000, and it's but it runs the whole hobby at the end of the day. You figure it runs CAF, it runs all the dealers I host. So it's a very worthwhile investment, and I certainly got my money out of the last server. But
Right.
but for me, it's just, people posting their artwork on CAF and sharing it socially and talking. As long as CAF is in the conversation, that's the most important thing. I mean, I do always say that the premium members are the thing that really helps make it what it is. I mean, if I didn't have as many premium members, my wife and I couldn't be devoted solely to working on CAF, 24/7. One of us would have been working at another job at some other point. So the support that we get is more than enough. I just want to make sure that we always stay relevant, and I always welcome getting feedback to help keep us relevant. How can we make the site better? I mean, I could tell you I'm already working on like the mobile redesign that everybody's been wanting me to do. As soon as Comic Art Live was over, we started working out, sketching out what we're going to be doing to change that. Hopefully that'll be done. I like to say like February, but I've got I want to beta test a lot with some core group of users because it's a big change for me to go through. But yeah, just keeping CAF relevant, using the site. I like getting, Comic Art Live as a show for us too. I mean, and the support that we've gotten from that has been really big, and I see that as being a big part of the work that I'm going to be doing going forward. Jason said, our show is really necessary. In-person shows, I don't really know. At the end of the day, I think that I've talked to enough artists who have found ways to they've strengthened their online selling, so they're certainly not going to go to as many shows as they used to, because they realize travel expenses are what really ate into the budget and the money they'd make when they were at a show. And if they can sell just as much while staying at home, they're not going to. I don't blame them either. And I think
as a collector, though, you can't beat the camaraderie of it being at a show and talking to other collectors, though.
Exactly. No, that's why I think the core shows are still going to stay, intact for our hobby. Comic Art Con will always be there. Heroes will always be there. New York Comic Con, San Diego, so I think that those kind of shows. But I think that that certain shows might not be as well attended. Does every dealer feel they have to travel to shows? And I think it's a mindset too that some dealers need to. Might have to break, on their own. I know that, I won't name any, certain dealers like to be out in front of people. And I think it's a part of the hobby, right? It's the wheeling and dealing. It's how you find those, rare gems that, like you said, a collector is going to come up with that you never knew of and bring art to a show. That's how you got to be out there. You got to be putting yourself out there. I just think if dealers are smart, they'll probably be focused, more in certain niches, like all the 3 or 4 comic art only cons that we've got, from LA to the couple in New York, or New Jersey, and they'll focus, on those things, and then the big shows, and so that's let's see, Ruben's got
one question if you can bring up is Ray Cuthbert asked about people, I guess, mentoring. And so I mean, I know that with some of the groups that I'm in, there's one group I'm in, we just have weekly Zoom chats with other collectors, and a lot of young collectors, some seasoned collectors, but you make really good friends that way. And a lot of times people will message you asking, what do you think about this piece? What do you think about the price? What do you think about this? Because they're new and everyone's afraid of paying a couple of bucks too much for a piece, even if they love it. So that's definitely something that continues to go on. And it's good, and a lot of people have been very thankful that you take the time to discuss with them why they should or should not buy a piece. Now, I'll try to never fully dissuade someone to buy something if they love it, but that's just it. The question is, do you love the piece, and is it priced within reason? Because those I think are the 2 biggest aspects of buying something. But yeah, there's a lot of young collectors who reach out to others, and I think as people who've been in the hobby for a while, I can't say I know nearly as much as other people do, like Nick Catratis and Nick Barucci that are probably listening. They know a lot more about some of the older art and might know more about newer art. But I think it's a great thing to help mentor and support some of the newer collectors that are coming in the hobby.
Yeah, and I've heard a lot about those groups. I am not in any of them, but I have heard that there are a number of, or just smaller groups of collectors, like 20 groups, 20 guys or gals in a group that are sharing information and asking those questions behind the scenes. I mean, CAF was never built for that. That's why Facebook is great, because it does the things that I don't ever want to be responsible for, having those types of things. And but I have heard the same thing, that there are a lot of groups out there like that, and it's fantastic. I mean, I know that those kinds of you don't get those things in the larger groups, that kind of thing, because everybody wants to kind of be more protective of, I've got a lead on something, you know what I mean? But there you go. Wayne says that you have been a great help in immersing me into the hobby. That's great. And it is.
Wayne's from Canada, really good guy. So yeah, we have a lot of good conversations. But yes, it's a big learning curve, because and I think one thing that has been a tough learning curve for all of us, which is a whole nother topic I'm not going to get too deep into, are blue lines. So that's
yes, exactly,
a whole other ball of wax.
No, that is definitely one of the bigger challenging questions out there, and I don't know. You're right. We probably shouldn't. That would be a show in and of itself.
That'd be a show in itself, absolutely.
Right. Yeah. No. And I've seen, because there's lots of challenging things out there, right? I mean, sometimes you buy something and it's only the inks, and it's not, and you realize there's a pencil piece that also exists of that same piece. I mean, does that disappoint you? I mean, if you like the art, you really don't care. But it's because in our hobby, it really is very hard to disclose all of those things. That there might be 7 prelims to the same piece, or maybe this artist always draws the same background when he does his con sketches, and so con sketches start looking really similar, right? And I've bought a piece of art from a really well-known artist that I've seen the same image done, for other people, and and what do you do? I mean, at the end of the day, artists kind of have, but you look at a Dave Gibbons Rorschach sketch, right? They're all going to pretty much look the same when he does his con sketches. So, but
if it's a quick one, you get it, right?
Right.
Walt Simonson store are pretty much going to look pretty close alike. Right?
Exactly. But you want one
full piece, right? But when it's a full commission piece, you want it to be a little bit different. I can agree with that.
Exactly. But those are the things that the pitfalls that you can run into, in our hobby, and you can never know everything going in and making that purchase, because those aren't questions you're going to think to ask.
Right.
Is this the only piece? Is it, are the pencils under that ink?
Right.
You never can tell. So, things, and, there are always problems in the hobby. I, had someone email me a couple weeks ago, asking me to get involved in a situation that, which I don't, because as everybody knows, I've said I get involved sometimes when things go wrong, but this was this very convoluted trade between 2 collectors, and one of the pieces that the collector got, that they thought was original, once they got it, it turned out to be a print that had been painted. But it was, as part of the trade, it was portrayed to be a fully pencil and inked piece that was painted afterwards, and it wasn't really, they might have used CAF to say, hey, here's my pieces, here's your pieces, but it's like, what do I do? I mean, I haven't even talked to the person who supposedly sent the print, but if I did, then I'm getting involved, right? At that point, then I have to step in and be, and ask that person all kinds of questions. And what am I going to do at the end of the day? I mean, the person who got the print said, I should shut down their gallery because they might do that to somebody else. Right. And I'm like, well, I mean, I can't do that. I said, I would tell everybody this, when something like that happens to you and the other person isn't being forthcoming and, to try to rectify it, however that might be, refunding you what you traded them, or maybe sending you an extra piece because maybe they didn't know it was a painted print. Hard to believe, but, I always tell them, let people know online, go to the CGC forums. I mean, the best pressure that can be applied is that, at least for me, the takeaway that I, as the owner of CAF, would be is that if I ever heard of this person screwing somebody else again, then I would step in, because right now, until I talk to them, I don't really know their side of the story. So, it's not my place. But, if I had 2 collectors that had similar things happen to them, then I could actually do something, because this is 2 premium members. You'd think that they are not the kinds of people that that would be lying to me or doing things that you wouldn't, that you wouldn't want to see happen. So fortunately, those things are few and far between. We don't.
We're small enough of a community that I think most people are trusting. So.
Right. Or they know how to put the leverage on them. And that's why I told the guy, I'm like, the first thing you should do is go to CGC, mention it, just say, you don't have to like totally throw the guy under the bus, but say, this is what happened. And, that message is going to get out to people that know this guy, so that they would say something to him, because it's something that I couldn't do. I still, where I'm at in it, I can't, I can't do that. But people that know this guy could say something, or, to them, and maybe push it along. The difficulty here was one collector's in Europe and the other one is in the States. So
that makes it harder, right?
It makes it so much harder. And, they had already transferred, I think it was 5 or 6 pieces on each side. So it was a big trade. And just this one small piece of it, that is throwing everything into, which is another reason why it's not like when what was it, that Delato issue from a couple
the
of
guy
years
swapped out for a print.
Yeah, right. If everybody hadn't heard that story, that was a guy in Canada sells a Wolverine painted piece, $3,000, ships it to the guy in LA. The guy in LA had paid via PayPal. Art gets delivered. Guy in Canada gets the notification it gets delivered, and immediately he gets immediately got a refund notice, or that the guy wanted his money back, and PayPal gave it to him. And through the communication, the buyer in LA put something in the mail back to the person in Canada and shipped them a print of the artwork, that
the exact same art, right?
The exact same art. Now, in that case, the person in LA had contacted the person in Canada through CAF. So, and everybody has to be registered. And in that instance, I knew that it was a new user who had clearly defrauded this guy, and and I did reach out to the buyer, the person who committed the crime, and I emailed him and I said, I know where you live, I know your IP address when you did this, and if you don't make amends, and I knew that the other guy was probably putting a lot more pressure on him than that, but I was like, I'll turn you over to whoever asks. So I mean, it is. It's tragic, but that one I kind of had to do something on, because it just felt, it felt wrong.
Right.
So bad things can happen, and they can happen on CAF too. And
the one thing I will say to all new collectors, especially, PayPal gift or PayPal friends and family, if you don't know the person, pay the fee, pay the 3%, just because you want that protection to be there. Otherwise, you're done.
No, I agree. And Ray actually has a question. What do you guys think about artists who do their pencils digitally and inks physically? Do you think that affects the price of the only original?
It's another gray area.
Yeah, I think it just depends on the artist and how much you want the art. I think that I don't miss the pencils as much. I guess I can see the I think doing digital pencils first is probably for some guys it's just quicker. That's what they're used to. I mean, my kids use drawing tablets, and better than I can use my mouse. And so I can see why a lot of younger, newer artists might go that route first. Maybe they need to show comps and stuff to editors or whatnot, and they can get it done. They can get their cover sketches done quicker that way. And then once they have that, why do they need to do the pencil outline on a piece of paper? They could just print it over onto that and then ink that. So I
think if it's the only original that exists, then I think the value should be probably about the same. No, but if there's like you said before, if there's a pencil version out there and an inked version out there, that makes a difference. I bought a cover once that I was told was the original, and then a few months later I saw the pencil version for sale. I was like, wait a minute, what did I just buy? So I thought this was everything. So yeah, right. If there's only one original and that's it, then I think it's okay.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's it's not the surprise you want to have at the end of the day, because again, you don't think that you need to ask those kind of questions when you buy a piece. But I do think that a lot of people who are buying art today, they're asking those questions. Are there pencils under those inks? And I think that's a good thing. I mean, I think that everybody should be disclosing as much as they can about a piece of art when they're selling it, whether they're selling it, whether it's a dealer or it's an artist selling it through their own site, or it's a collector selling artwork, marketing their artwork through CAF. We all have to be very forthcoming in these sorts of things, because again, nobody wants a surprise. And yeah. So sorry, we're getting a lot of comments. The great Darwin Cook used to do that. Yep. And Tatiana says pencils are erased on inked pieces anyway, but yes, for good. Yes, in most cases, right. I mean, you can still see pencils under some stuff, but I would completely agree with you, Tatiana, that they are. But let's see. Rich says,
"Oh, geez,
what did I miss? Oh, here, Brian Tidwell. I remember being
Rich's comment was like, wow.
Oh, I'm sorry. Let's see. What did Rich say? It's a guy. Bill helped me catch a cyber stalker who was harassing. Oh, geez, Rich, I totally forgot about that.
That's
wow.
Scary.
Yeah, no, I do remember that. Wow. See, I kind of blocked those things out of my mind afterwards. I'm sorry, but yes, no. So I have helped out. A few cases. Yeah, I've got it.
When it gets that bad, right?
Right. Exactly. Let's see. Brian said, I remember being stunned at the price for Djurjevic prelims, but it was only physical art. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, I don't know, Brian. I mean, you're right. At the end of the day, sometimes I don't know. I've seen his prelims. I love his work. So you gotta go by your gut on stuff like that. Oh yeah, Tatiana's married to an inker.
And I've reached out to Art Germ a couple of times when I saw a cover he did. I'm like, I love this cover. Do you have the original? And one thing a lot of us artists are dealing with now, collectors are dealing with now, he says, oh, it was done digitally. There is no art for it. So I know what my friend Jason and I were trying to get pages from the Giant Size X-Men tribute book, which is a book where each page is by other artists. I think about half of the book was done digitally. And wow. When you love the art so much, it just kills you. Like, oh, I can give you a mono print though. You're like, okay, I'm not really into prints, but okay, And during Tom King's Batman run, Yannick Paquette did these amazing double-page spreads of Batman and Catwoman. I reached out to him. He says it was all digital. Oh, that just kills you.
Right. Oh, I know. And I mean, as creators, I think that if they've never really had experienced original art sales, then I can see people gravitating towards working digitally, but knowing what the aftermarket can bring, I'd like to think that most creators are going to stay traditional at the end of the day. It would be pretty disappointing for all of us if they didn't. That's why, and I just can't see them wanting to do that. For all the financial reasons, of course. Charles just asked a question about people doing commissions based on rather than recreating covers, just picking panels, images. I mean, the cool thing with commissions is, if the artists are willing to draw it, I mean, I think any angle that gets you, something that you think is really, that you want to have done by that creator is a great approach to it. I think that the more, artists like to draw stuff that they like to draw. So, when you're approaching people with commissions, there's a lot of times you're going to get turned down. If your ideas are too overreaching, a lot of times artists, when they do commissions, they don't want an editor. They have that in their day job. So a lot of artists like you to come into it with more of a, this is what I'd like, do what you like with it. And, I think that a lot of times you might get a better result in your commission when you approach it like that. Because I had, can't even remember who I had spoken to. It was way early in I was almost just getting commissions when I first started collecting. So around 2001, 2002. I don't remember who I had talked to, but it's like I wanted an X-Men commission, like a Sentinel. It's dead on the ground. Everybody's and the guy was like, I have editors in my day job.
Oh,
and
wow.
it turned me down. And gosh, I can't remember who that was though. But it was funny. But he told it to me right to my face. I was like, okay.
Wow. What it is with commissions these days costing 4 figures. As a client, you should also have a little bit of say into it. I get you don't want to be directing the artist, but you should have a little bit of say as to what you'd like to do. There's one commission an artist is working for me now, and he showed me a prelim. I said, hey, that looks really cool. I says, I think if you did this, it might look cooler. So afterwards, he says, I usually don't take art direction, but your suggestion made the piece look so much better. I'm like, you're welcome. So it just ends up working out okay.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And but that's why I'm trying to say, is there's different ways to approach probably, doing these, where you can tell them I want a straight recreation, and some people will say no, they don't want to do it, and because it's at the end of the day that's their free time when they're taking on commission requests or con sketches. So
I was fortunate to get a couple from Gabriel Delato recently, and his rep said you can ask the character, you can maybe say a costume, but that's it. You can't ask for anything else, what the character is doing or nothing. This is it. I was okay, fine.
Right, because they're today, like you said, I mean, they're getting a lot of the artists are really doing a lot more in their commissions. They're getting paid much better for them. I mean, in some cases better than their cover rate,
Right.
for commissions that they're doing for collectors, and they want to do something fun. I mean, they want to do something that really makes them excited, and
Right.
so yeah, it's a fine line to walk, that's for sure.
Right. Listen, the one thing I can't imagine is, I kind of feel bad. These artists, this is their day job. So we're basically, they're spending their weekends at a show, and it's basically their job, and we're kind of harping over them to do something which they might just want to be relaxing at home, not drawing. So I think we
Exactly.
forget that this is their job. This isn't what they love to do. They do it because they want to put food on the table. So
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. So yeah, but yeah, we all have those stories. I mean, and that's how you learn, though. You kind of you feel your way through those things. I mean, I think after that happened to me, I don't think I ever approached anybody with the same kind of I want it just like this, and I think I was the better for it. But as collectors, we all make all kinds of mistakes, whether it's overpaying or just asking the wrong question sometimes can make you feel like an idiot. I mean, the first time I walked up to Albert Moy, I was scared shitless, and I didn't really, I don't even think I talked to him.
Scared shitless.
Oh, yeah, exactly. Well, yeah. Well, if you're a buyer, then yeah, Albert and I have a really good relationship now, and I haven't bought anything from him for a long time, but he doesn't scare me anymore. But he used to scare the hell out of me. And Anthony's a big softie, but you look at him, you think he's like ready to rip somebody's head off, but
Right.
until you get to know him, you think that he's Oscar the Grouch. So I'm not trying to give any secrets away about Anthony. If you want to think, if anybody wants to think he's a grouch, you can, but he's actually not.
I think one of the nicest dealers in the hobby is Jim Warden, who you're going to have next month. So I look forward to that. One of the best guys. When I was in college and had very little money, he would like you're in college, I can't even charge you for shipping, man. That's fine. So and I was buying burned modern pages from him, and I was like, thank you so much. You don't forget that. You never forget when someone treats you well. That's just it.
Yep. Oh no, I've known Jim a long time, and I'm looking forward to chatting with him because we've never really had any long conversations about the hobby and whatnot. But no, he's a great guy. He has an absolutely fantastic reputation, and he's been in the hobby for quite some time. So yeah, I'm looking forward to chatting with him.
That's some great stories.
Oh yeah. He would be somebody who'd want to have on for a long time, or even have on a second time. But that's. Jason says, "Time for the moods of Moy." Yeah,
not right now, Jason. It's his birthday. Leave him alone.
That's right. So yeah, I could, Moy and I haven't set it up yet, but he actually has agreed to do a chat. But he said he won't do it with the other dealers. We're going to do it just he and I, hopefully early in January. I kind of pitched him on whatever the first Thursday in January is. I think the 7th or something. So that'll be one.
Great stories to tell too.
Yeah, no, I think we'll have a really good time. I think that'll be a well-attended chat with him for sure. Well, listen, we're actually past the hour and a half mark.
Oh yeah. Time goes, right?
Yes, it does. Yes, it does. So I don't know if anybody had any other questions for either of us, but Ankur, this has been a lot of fun, man. Thank
you so much for having me. It was a blast.
No, yeah. Well, you were a great organizer. We've always had it. There's been a lot of people in this chat, and everybody's been very talkative. I think kind of makes things a lot more fun. So I appreciate everybody tuning in this evening. And like I said, we've got December's all filled. Ankur, did you have anything else you wanted to say to everybody before we tune out?
No, just stay safe, stay healthy. Being a pharmacist, health is always my top concern. So be careful, everyone out there.
Yeah, and
And
definitely.
post on CAF.
And post on CAF. Yes, exactly. That, like I said, that's all I need. At the end of the day, I'm just happy when everybody's using CAF. That's
Awesome.
That's the best thing everybody can do for me. And again, thanks for taking the time, Ankur. Thanks for everybody for tuning in. And we'll be chatting again soon. Take care.
Have a good night. Thanks again.